Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. All of us have a mind, and there is an arrogance to the mind. And this arrogance often tells us that if the mind cannot explain it, it cannot be explained. If the mind can't see it, it can't be seen. So the mind isn't going to show you God. And the atheist takes all of his direction for the mind, from the mind, is going to stay an atheist because he can't understand anything beyond the mind. The mind is an impediment to our understanding reality. The mind is the distance between ourselves and the truth. The mind creates mountains between ourselves and the truth that have to be crossed. And it's very, very difficult to cross these mountains. These mountains have to be destroyed before we can begin to understand the truth. But reality exists. Whether the mind acknowledges it or not, reality exists. God exists. Whether the mind acknowledges it or not, God exists. And we, each of us, have to find a way that we can establish a belief system that is beyond the comprehension of the mind. If we can't do that, then we are going to be caught in the arrogance of the mind, in the meanderings of the mind, in the hallucinations of the mind, in the illusion of the mind, and we're going to treat those meanderings, hallucinations, and illusion as reality without any comprehension of truth. How does man bridge that gap? How does he bridge the gap between illusion and reality? How is man taught then there is more to existence than the mind? I think it was Descartes who said, "I think, therefore I am." And in saying that, he was describing just a portion of the equation that is humanity. He missed the larger portion of the equation that is humanity. He comprehended his own mind, and he believed that was reality. But there is more to it. There is more to understanding it. A tree can have many fruits. Some of the fruits are ripe, and some of the fruits are immature. This all goes on at the same time. On the same tree, there can be ripe fruits, and there can be immature fruits. Ripe fruits have an entirely different taste than a fruit that isn't ripe, an immature fruit. And a human who deals exclusively from the mind has a different perspective than one who has been able to understand that there is more to our existence than this mind. God exists. Whether our mind is able to comprehend him or not, God exists. God is not dependent on our mind for his being. On the contrary, our mind is dependent on him for its being. Even though we may not be aware of it, even though we may not be cognizant of it, even though we may not have any consciousness of it, God is very close to us. The expression is that God is closer to us than our own jugular vein. Man is within God, and God is within man. A scientist discovered a particle recently, which they called the Higgs boson, which they found contained in almost or in everything. And they called it the God particle, for lack of a better term for it, because it was everywhere and within everything. And God is everywhere and within everything. And we are within him, and he is within us. Yet our consciousness is not necessarily cognizant of this connection. So we ask ourselves questions like, what is he like? And over the years, different civilizations have given different answers to that question. Some have said he's the sun. Some have said he's the moon. Some have said he's the spirit that resides within animals. Others have said that God can be recreated into an idol. And in worshiping this idol, we can control events, that we can pray to him. In order to dispel all of these inaccuracies about God, in order to dispel all of these incorrect conjectures about God, he sent 124,000 prophets onto the earth to tell men about God and to explain God to man, so that man could understand the reality that is God, so that man could understand the truth that is God, so that man could come out of his ignorance and his false conjecture and enter into the truth. Where is he? How do we find him? What form does he have? Well, God is without form, yet man has form. So where is he? Is he located somewhere specifically? No, there is no specific location where you can find him. It's not as if he were found in a mosque or in a church or in a synagogue or in a temple. He's found everywhere. What religion does he have? He's beyond religion. He's beyond that understanding. He's beyond that kind of understanding that man has. Religion is a creation of man. Truth is the reality of God. And when religion coincides with truth, then it is true. But when it doesn't, it's not. Gandhi was traveling through India and was talking about religion and the truth of religion. And he was in the midst of giving a talk about some of the religious practices in Hinduism, one of which was that a wife whose husband had died was to be burned on the pyre along with her husband, or else be sent to a monastery. And Gandhi stated at that time, once I understood that religion was truth, but now I understand that truth is religion. So that which is true is true. That which isn't true is contained in many religions. But that doesn't make it true because the religion put a stamp on it of truth. All the religions have prayer. But what is prayer? How does one pray to God? How does one worship God? We understand, and it has been explained to us by the prophets, that God has no form. He has no eyes, but he sees everything. He has no ears, but he hears everything. He has no nose, but he can smell the fragrance of everything. He has no hands, but he does all of this work in the world. He has no feet, but he goes everywhere. He knows everything, but for some reason, our eyes are closed to him. His eyes are always open, but our eyes are closed to him. So we need to ask ourselves, what is the way to find God? What is the way to understand God? Now, fortunately, after the prophets, God continued to send wise men into the world. Some of these were called jnanis, or men of wisdom. Others were called ketubs, being the axis between heaven and earth. But they continued to spread the message of truth. And they said, the way that we find God is through understanding the formless, through understanding light, and through understanding light, understanding wisdom. And light is the inherence of God's qualities. And through the combination of God's qualities and wisdom, we begin to understand truth. And what is it that is different about wisdom than is different about ordinary understandings or ordinary knowledge? What is it that's different about it that makes it transcend the illusory knowledge of the mind and the world? To understand this, we have to understand the difference between the satanic qualities and the godly qualities. The satanic qualities are arrogance, jealousy, spitefulness, hatred, enmity, separation of men, lust, sexual desire, desire for wealth within the world. God's qualities, on the other hand, are transcendent. They don't have to do with making the self larger. They have to do with protection and with giving. God is the creator, the sustainer, and the nourisher. And what are the qualities he uses within this creation and all of creation to do his work? He uses his divine qualities. He uses mercy and compassion and love and kindness and justice. God treats everyone equally. God doesn't have favorites. God gives unto all, and he gives equally. And he waits for man to recognize the truth that he is, and he waits for man to acknowledge his existence and find the way towards him. So, wisdom is different than ordinary knowledge because wisdom doesn't come from the point of self-interest. Wisdom doesn't come from the point of view of illusion. Wisdom doesn't come from the satanic qualities. Wisdom doesn't come from power. Wisdom doesn't come from wealth. Wisdom doesn't come from aggression. Wisdom comes from the light. Wisdom comes from being able to make your decisions through mercy and compassion, to bring action into being that exemplify mercy and compassion, that exemplify God's qualities. And this changes one's perspective. This changes who one is. This changes the nature of man. A lion has the qualities of a lion. He's an animal, and he reacts as an animal reacts. A bear has the qualities of a bear and reacts as a bear reacts. A cheetah has the qualities of a cheetah. An elephant has the qualities of an elephant. But man is capable of having the qualities of God. God has seen fit to give to man the greatest treasure in existence, which is God himself. God has seen fit to give to man of himself. And what greater fortune, what greater treasure in existence is there than to be given God's qualities? So if we can incorporate God's qualities into our being, then we will act with wisdom, because we act with the perspective of God's qualities as opposed to acting with the perspective of self-interest, as opposed to acting with the perspective of the world, as opposed to acting with the perspective of illusion, as opposed to accepting the elemental scenario that we all live in as reality, in understanding that this elemental scenario is a creation and it fades away. And we are more than this elemental scenario. Now, all of us have a body, and we are aware of the fact that this body is elemental. This body is made up of the various elements, which are simplified to earth, air, fire, water, and ether. But these elements are that which is created. There is more to us than that. Allah is the original essence. And that original essence, when he created man, placed within man a ray of that original essence, which is Allah. And that original essence became known as the soul, and that soul resides within us. That soul resides within every one of us. Now, the question that comes up is, have we lost touch with that original essence? Have we lost touch with our understanding of God? Have we lost touch with reality? In order to find our way back, to reality, we need to have faith, certitude, and determination. And how do we acquire faith, certitude, and determination? Well, I'll tell you how it happened for me. When I was approximately 26, met one of these wise men who understands truth. And I was able to watch him. I was able to watch the way he acted. I was able to watch what he did. And I was able to listen to what he said. And in hearing him, there was much that I didn't understand, but it had a resonance of truth to it. And for the first time in my life, this resonance of truth vibrated within me and felt real. And I knew that I had to learn more about this. I also understood right at the beginning that if I doubted, that would create a barrier between myself and the truth that was being given to me. So I learned to suspend doubt. And I learned that that which I didn't understand, I would eventually understand. And I had to give myself the time to mature, the time to understand. We all go through phases. You start out as a child, you go to school, you get married, you get a job. Each of these is a growth in your being. Each of these requires a different kind of understanding. But then it also comes to the point where you begin to realize that this life is not forever, that this life is temporary, because you see everyone around you over time disappear. And then you begin to wonder, well, what happens when I disappear? What happens when my time is over? What is truth? And how do I find truth? And the teacher explains these things slowly and brings you into that knowledge slowly. He tells you that you are very, very close to God, and the distance between you and God is mind and desire. So this implement, this tool that you've been using your whole life to make your decisions for you, the mind, you find out is a barricade to your understanding the truth. And as long as you follow the mind, you are being led astray from God. So no matter what the mind tells you, you have to have faith, certitude, and determination as to the truth of the formless God, as to the truth of his qualities, as to his eternity, and as to your eternity if you find your connection to him. We are within him, and he is within us. He is everywhere. And if he is everywhere, he is also within us. And if we are within him, how do we get to know him? And we get to know him by accepting his qualities as our own qualities. So a transformation takes place within us where we give up illusion and take on truth, where we give up that which isn't real for that which is real, that we give up that which is temporary for that which is eternal. There are so many temporary things that as we go through them, we get pleasure from. And we believe we can continue to get pleasure from them. And we believe that they will continue to give us sustenance. But then we find over time that that pleasure is gone, and we lose touch with that pleasure. And then we also begin to realize that much of that pleasure that we get in the world has to do with abhorrent qualities. It has to do with lust. It has to do with power. It has to do with greed. It has to do with qualities that don't take us towards God, but in actuality take us away from God. And that's when we realize that what is separating ourselves from God is our mind and desire. And there's this huge mountain that mind and desire is that we have to break through. And it's very difficult to break through that mountain, because that mountain is made up of all of our attachments to this world. So all of the things that we've encountered over time, that we've clung to, that we've given obeisance to, that we've given form to, that we've given prayer to, that we've held as idols, all of these things have to be let go of. If we believe in wealth, we've made form out of wealth and we worship it. If we believe in power, we've made form out of power and we worship it. If we believe in sex, we've made form out of sex and we worship it. We worship so many things that are temporary in nature. And then, of course, there's all of our blood ties, our relatives, all of these things that we hold close that are all going to disappear once truth comes. We need to blow up this mountain of attachment. We need to blow up this mountain that holds us in place and doesn't allow us to understand the truth. We have to learn what true prayer is and what true communion is. We have to learn the way to connect with God outside of the way that the mind works. We have to create a room within ourselves for God's qualities to reside. And the door to that room is faith, certitude, and determination. So we have to very strongly believe with every fiber of our being that God exists. And we have to be certain that he is going to show himself to us and that we are going to find him. And we have to learn what true prayer is. We have to learn how true prayer is done and the methodology of it. The prophets, when they came, gave the kalima to man. And the kalima is the understanding of La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah is Arabic, and it means nothing exists but God. Only God exists. And we need to become the son of that existence. We need to become connected to that existence. And how do we become connected to that existence? Through wisdom, through the qualities of God, and through the repetition of this so-called kalima, through the repetition of I do not exist, only God exists. The mind, on the other hand, is here to tell you, I exist. Descartes said, I exist because I think. My mind proves my existence. But the mind doesn't prove existence. The mind only proves a temporary blip in eternity. We want to go beyond that temporary blip into the eternal understanding of things. We have to become aware of, understand, and be entwined with that which is eternal. And the way we entwine with that which is eternal is to follow the eternal instruction of truth. And the eternal instruction of truth is only God exists. I do not exist. And we have to stop listening to the ongoing meanderings, the ongoing dialogue that the mind has with the world. We have to separate ourselves from that and enter in the truth. We have to see God in everything as opposed to seeing elements in everything. Shakespeare said the world is a play, and we are all merely players. Bawa often used the play as an example, and he said, if you go to see a play, depending on your interest, you will watch different portions of the play with different amounts of interest. If you're interested in costumes and makeup, you will watch the costumes and makeup. If you're interested in drumming, you will watch the drummer in the orchestra. If you're interested in horned instruments, you will listen to them with a keen ear. If you're interested in guitars, you will listen to them with a keen ear. If you're interested in dancing, you will pay more attention to the dancing. Wherever your interest lies, that's what you will pay attention to. But a man of wisdom, a man with understanding of truth, a man with understanding of God's reality and the point of God, will take everything that he sees within the play and pointed towards God. Everything he sees becomes a proof of God. Everything he sees becomes an example of God. Everything he sees points us towards God. So when we walk through the world, we have all these different interests, and we pay attention to certain parts of the world. But can we begin to understand that in truth, everything came from him, and everything returns to him, and everything is of him, everything is sustained by him, and everything is protected by him? So unless we see the connection of things to him, we are missing the truth, and we are only seeing the elemental form, and we are giving the elemental form credence, when in fact what we need to give credence to is God. And this is the process of maturity, the process of pulling away from the wonders of the world and understanding that there is only one wonder, and that one wonder is God, and that one wonder has to be understood, and that one wonder is what we need to focus on. Now, to be in true communion with God, there can be no lapse in our attention. We have 43,000 approximately breaths per day. With each breath, we need to praise him. We need to acknowledge him. We need to do his work. And his work for us is the acknowledgement that he is all that exists. But what do we do instead? We count. We count beads. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Can you count that which is inestimable? Can you count God? Beads are like a stepping stone. Beads are like a tricycle before you ride a bicycle. Beads are a step in the direction, but counting beads is not reaching God. Going to the place where you no longer count, but you are in constant reverence, is the place where we need to go, where we need to be. There is no counting in truth. There just is truth. There is no counting God. He is beyond numbers. He is beyond words. He is beyond the comprehension of the mind. And we need to leave the absorption in the mind that controls us and enter into the open space where the mind no longer is the arbiter of what we do. We have to escape from the mind. We have to escape from the world. We have to escape into truth. We have to take each step slowly towards reality. And we have to constantly stay focused. And even though we may be blind to seeing him at this point, we have to fervently believe that our eyes will open. His eyes are always open. Our eyes are shut until they open. But because we cannot see truth now, we have to believe that the time will come when we will see truth. And it's within that faith, certitude, and determination, within the acceptance of God's qualities, within changing our inner self to reflect God's qualities and act with God's qualities, that we become truth. And our demeanor changes. Man looks like his heart is. If man is compassionate and man carries compassion and mercy within him, you will see compassion and mercy in his face. You will see justice in his face. You will see kindness in his face. You will see truth in his face. I've seen that. We can all see that. At first, we may see it in others, but we have to believe that eventually we'll see it in ourselves, and truth will overwhelm us to the point that our understanding will become clear, our heart will be purified, our being will be purified, and everything that is not real will be gone from us, and we will be true representatives of God on earth, which is the reason that we have been created. So may it come to pass for each of us that his qualities become our qualities, that his truth becomes our truth, that his way becomes our way, that his actions become our actions, and we come to know reality. May that be the destiny for each of us. Ameen, Ameen. Ya Rabbil Alameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.